This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast. Are you guys ready to get unplugged from the matrix? Today, I invite everybody to keep an open mind for our discussion because there are many things which are shared on social media and on the internet that we see that make everything seem so black and white, right? And this episode is meant to challenge your belief system. And by keeping an open mind, maybe you walk away from this discussion by gaining something new and being able to integrate or discard something from your life which you actually thought was actually benefiting you. And we've got Dr. Alex Orton on the line today, which he shares some incredible knowledge and information on social media. Definitely go and check him out. His links will be in the description below. So thank you for coming on the show, Dr. Alex. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Andreas. Appreciate it.
So let's start off with a bit of a controversial one. So lately you posted a post on Instagram, which was and really, you make these really nice pictures. I'm sure that many people have seen your style on social media. And I've noticed that many other brands and people actually have started copying your style. Well, I don't know who kind of started it first, but I really love it. You know, it's super engaging. It's a lot. It's like, you know, one picture is like 1,000 words, right? And yours is like 1,000,000 words, pretty much. And one that you made was about unhealthy things which are actually healthy. Do you want to enlighten us on that? What do you actually mean by that?
Yeah, you know, I think that there's so many different perspectives in the holistic medicine world, and frankly, there's just a lot of bad ideas.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know where some of these ideas came from. You know, I think a lot of it is an attempt to find alternatives to the conventional model.
Yes.
And, you know, because it's alternative to the mainstream model, it's like you get this diversity of opinions because everyone's kind of searching for different things. But through that process, I think a lot of crazy ideas develop. So, you know, a good example is the idea that carbs are somehow poison for you. And I know that you've talked about this on your podcast before. In the like ketogenic, carnivore, paleo kind of like current chapter that we're experiencing in the nutrition and holistic space, there's this idea that carbs are and sugar is poison. People think that like sugar causes cancer, and the idea is to get like your blood sugar as low as possible. Like any increase in blood sugar, blood glucose over like 100 is somehow going to create chronic inflammation and like heart disease and things like this. And, you know, I'm not like a big like research kind of guy. I don't spend my time on PubMed analyzing studies. I approach things from a pretty like common sense, practical perspective. It's not to say that I don't take like research seriously. It's just like not my main cup of tea. I let other people kind of do that work. And then I kind of learn from other people that are smarter than me, that are able to look and analyze studies. But I look at like history, like the historical context, you know, like you live in the Mediterranean. It's like there are plenty of longevity spots in Greece and Italy where people are living to 100+ years and completely healthy, super high libido, gardening, like living on their own and dying peacefully in their sleep, beyond 100 years old. And these individuals eat tons of carbs. I mean, it's part of the culture. It's part of the lifestyle. They've been doing it for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So just a simple example like that, it's like it completely destroys the idea that carbs are poison. Because if you get a group of people and, you know, by percentage, they're living way longer than the rest of the population, and they're eating sourdough bread and fruit and rice and potatoes. It's like, well, clearly there's something wrong with that theory.
Guys, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and the like button. Now back to the show. Oh yeah, you hammered a very important point there, and it's just that nuance and context is everything. I feel like with social media, they love to remove the nuance and context and make these blanket statements like that applies to everyone, and it's not at all like that. Maybe there is a situation in time when someone would benefit by doing a keto low carb diet for whatever reason, right? But then the majority of the time, you wouldn't really want to be there. You would want to use these as strategic tools in your toolbox for whatever reason you believe that it may be beneficial, for example. But at the same time, you need to ask the deeper question, why can my body not tolerate carbohydrates, for example? Why is it having issues? Why are my insulin resistant to carbohydrates? Because everybody loves to blame carbohydrates on insulin because of insulin resistance, because they think the insulin resistance is caused by carbohydrates, when in reality there is so many environmental factors, and through diet as well, dietary choices, or even overconsumption of food, which is the most basic one, that can just alone make you insulin resistant temporarily, you know. And it's just so easy to just pinpoint one thing and blame one thing, when in reality I feel like people are outsourcing their responsibility to something external from themselves, and they don't want to like take the responsibility for themselves to actually think, what could I be possibly doing which is making my body not be able to handle certain things? Do you want to talk to me a little bit about I know that I'm not promoting cigarettes, by the way, but I'm just wondering your view and your opinion on smoking and nicotine in general. Like, that I'm pretty sure you've heard about the benefits of nicotine. I'm a very big user of Nick-Nack, and I truly believe in the incredible benefits that it has to offer. Now, I'm not telling anybody that you should go and do it, you know, or take any nicotine. I'm just saying that I've noticed incredible benefits, and there is some incredible research out there. Do you want to maybe go down that rabbit hole, you know, talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, again, I'm not an expert in biochemistry and understanding like the long-term consequences of like chronic nicotine use or anything. Again, I look at history. There's plenty of people that are living super long life and smoking cigarettes or smoking cigars. Of course, we're not talking about the super toxic industrial made cigarettes that have a bunch of chemicals in it, because I think that's really the problem.
Yes.
There's actually a funny story. I have a medical doctor colleague. He's a really cool guy. I won't share his name, but we were at a little workshop together, and we were staying in this hotel, and I went outside and he was smoking a cigarette. And he was like very apologetic. He was kind of embarrassed that I saw him, and he said, "Hey, you know, I just want you to know, like, this is hand rolled. It's completely pure." And then later he came up to me and said, "Hey, just so you know, the research actually shows that there's no harm in smoking cigarettes if they're pure tobacco, you know, like the Native Americans in America did." He told me about this study where they actually attached like little gas masks to mice and exposed them to tobacco smoke, like 24/7, pure tobacco smoke.
Wow.
And they didn't get lung cancer. So I think a lot of the downstream consequences of smoking is from the carcinogens, you know, potentially even like conventional tobacco with pesticides on it. Like, of course, I would recommend doing organic.
Yes.
But again, I think it's everything in moderation. So I'm not promoting smoking cigarettes either. I'm not necessarily promoting doing high amounts of nicotine every day, but it seems to be that there's a lot of evidence that a moderate amount of that is totally fine.
Most people chase energy, performance, and good cognitive function through stimulants, but that only gets you so far and depletes your system over time, as it doesn't address the foundation of cellular energy, which is your mitochondria. One of my favorite tools to boost cellular energy, mitochondrial function, reduce inflammation, and is also a potent antioxidant. That's methylene blue. Methylene blue is a fascinating molecule, as it's able to grab onto electrons and donate them anywhere where they are required in the body, making it an awesome antioxidant, and restores electron flow in the mitochondria, resulting in more cellular energy, ATP. I love to use methylene blue, especially in times of high stress. It keeps my brain clear and energy sharp, so I can perform my best no matter what life throws at me. So if you want to explore the methylene blue that I use, head over to the description below and make sure to use the promo code attached to get a nice discount on your entire order. I do believe that there is some kind of hormetic stress kind of component to it, right? I believe from what I've read, it helps to increase mitochondrial function. And I guess like everything, you know, there is like a U curve, right? Or a bell curve. So if you find the sweet spot for your body, like in your situation in time, because I guess it can push someone's nervous system over the edge if they're like too fried or something like that. I think it depends on your redox potential and your status, really, how you are, how healthy you are. And if you are unhealthy, I feel like it could push your mitochondria way too much, and it could, damage them even more. And to put this in even more context and nuance, I believe it's a lot to do with what people are doing with the rest of their lives as well. So if someone is like eating well, they're sleeping well, they have good circadian rhythms, they're detoxified, well, from the other things, right? And then they are doing something like, I'm not a big proponent of smoking. This is why I use the knickknacks myself, right? Because I prefer to just bypass the smoke element. However, I have heard some spiritual type of podcasts talking about connecting with mother tobacco, sort of seeing it sort of like a sacred experience. And there's something special in connecting with the plant. And I feel there is a massive attack on this in the world right now. I don't know if you've noticed, but here in Cyprus specifically and in Europe, they are bumping the taxes up like crazy on cigarettes. So people are going to have a way harder time now to get access to cigarettes. And I feel like there is going to be eventually, because I'm sure you've heard about the story where people in COVID who actually smoked were less likely to develop any symptoms compared to people who didn't smoke, which was actually showing how like nicotine binds to the receptor and somehow it inhibits the virus, whether it exists or not, like to, go in and do damage. So there is all these kind of things. And so just to bring it into perspective, it's so important to realize, it's about the health and of the host, of the individual, right? So let's not go too deep down this rabbit hole, because maybe some people will already like tune off thinking that this is going to be a nicotine smoking, advert. I just wanted to kind of share that, just because I've had a very positive, like personal experience with that, noticing a boost in my energy levels and my cognition and even in my hormones, and just even on the days when I cycle off it. So I like to do 5 days on and 2 days off per week. And I take very low dose, like 1.5 milligram. I cut a 3 milligram, what do you call it? One of those that you stick in your lip. And I just have that. And then that works for me absolutely fine. Where sometimes when I have a bit higher, like 3 milligrams, I just feel like a little bit like lightheaded and a bit more nauseous. Kind of feels like it depletes my system, or my body like burns through carbs or something like way faster. So I just feel like maybe it's not, the most desirable thing unless you're like super fueled or, you have enough cellular energy. Do you want to maybe tell me about other things that people are doing, which are, or rather, what other things which are actually unhealthy, which are believed to be unhealthy, and they are actually good for us?
The guy that I always go to for this is Raymond Pete, Dr. Ray Pete. He was like the original contrarian that had all of these ideas that went totally against mainstream thinking. So the idea that milk is bad for you, or that we shouldn't drink milk, or that everyone's lactose intolerant. I don't think there's any real good evidence for this. And again, I go back to the longevity cultures in, I think it's Greece. There's, big sheep farmers and or shepherds, I guess you'd say, and a lot of sheep milk consumption and cheese consumption, things like this. So that dairy is bad for you, that fish oil and polyunsaturated fats are good for you, because of this idea of like a what do you call it? An essential fatty acid deficiency, that we need to get these fats from our diet. And maybe there's some truth to that we need to get some, but the idea that people are supplementing with like tablespoons of fish oil on top of what they're already going to be getting from like grass-fed meat and things like this. It's like, I don't think that there's a good reason to supplement with additional polyunsaturated fats. These are fats that are extremely susceptible to being broken down with heat and oxidation. Yes. Just sitting on the shelf, they can break down, and then it's basically just a bottle of free radicals, right? These are the same kinds of fats that are in seed oils that break down with heat. Of course, this is a whole class of fatty acids, and there's different types. There's different types that are in fish oils compared to seed oils. But the point is, we're being bombarded already with huge amounts of polyunsaturated fats because of the the use of seed oils. I don't know about in your culture in Cyprus what it's like, but in America, they're subsidized. They're in, every restaurant is basically using seed oils unless you're in like a really cool community and people are really aware of that. So that's another one I think that like really, when we post these posts and say, oh, things that people think are healthy are actually unhealthy, and we say fish oil, everyone like freaks out.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean? I've been taking fish oil for years. I heard that it was the best thing for you.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. It's so huge. I mean, people don't also understand the difference between something in the food matrix versus like a supplement. Like, of course, supplements do have their time and place. Some things that we don't get in our diet anymore, but things that you actually can get from nature, I feel like should always be eaten within the food matrix. Like if you're gonna, if you're worried about DHA or omega-3s, I would, of course, eat the whole fish. I feel like it's just so much less susceptible to being, damaged in comparison to taking a capsule, which has been sitting on the shelf and oxidizing and sitting in a plastic bottle under fluorescent lighting and, travel through heat. It's not even temperature regulated, and then you're consuming it. But never mind about that. What about like the actual seed oils that you talked about that people are frying their food in? And it's a really, really like huge issue. What kind of problems and symptoms are you seeing or have you heard of people experiencing from consuming too many seed oils?
That's an interesting one because I don't think that the effects are super obvious and direct in the short term.
Right.
Now, I'm sure everyone has experienced going to a restaurant, eating a whole basket of fries and feeling like crap afterwards. It's almost like your vision feels like it's kind of yellow, like you're wearing yellow blue light glasses. But I think, Chris Masterjohn has done a lot of really good research. I think he's one of the best in the nutritional space as far as understanding research and understanding the nuances like you're talking about, because I don't think that he would argue that that the essential fatty acids don't exist. Like a lot of people in the repeat space think that the whole idea of essential fatty acids is like a bunk theory. And again, I don't have the research background to prove that one way or another. So I take a more moderate approach, just like you said. It's like, I'm not against eating salmon.
Yes.
If you're eating the whole thing, of course, you're going to be getting some fish oils in the salmon. But you could argue whether or not that's good or not. But I think that when you're eating it in the whole foods matrix, it's much more protected. It's much safer that way. You're getting smaller amounts than if you're actually supplementing with larger amounts. But, going back to Chris Masterjohn, he's done a lot of good research around this. And I don't think that you really start to see symptoms and like lab results, for example, becoming abnormal until like 10 plus years of consuming seed oils. And this is one of the reasons why the mainstream continues to promote the idea that there's no problem with seed oils, because they're not actually tracking the data long enough. They're not watching the populations over a long enough time horizon. That's one of the problems with research in general. It's like, you can't just study people for 2 years and understand how seed oils impact the body when they're being stored in the tissues and people are eating them for decades. So I don't think there's a lot of research actually around long-term, and I don't know exactly the timeline that would be. It's like 10, I think it's like 10 plus years of seeing the impact. And I would say that's the case with a lot of toxins in general. When people switch out their toxins in terms of like their household products or their body care products or cleaning products, I don't expect that you're going to switch out toxins in your home and then wake up the next morning and feel like a different person. That's just not how toxicity works. It's right. It's like a low grade inflammation where the toxic load is slowly building up over time. And then down the line, you're going to start to see degeneration and problems. So, if I work with a lot of people that have like serious chronic illnesses. That's always a part of the picture, is like removing the toxic load from the system. But I don't think that that's going to make an instant impact. But of course, everyone should do that, because you're going to be really giving yourself a lot of real estate long term if you're decreasing your toxic load so that's not continuing to build up over time.
Everybody knows about vitamin C, but have you ever heard about vitamin G? I'm talking about grounding. We know that oxygen is important for our survival, but what if I told you that grounding is just as foundational for our health? Your body is literally a battery and needs to be recharged every single day. Modern life depletes it. Fatigue, insomnia, brain fog, and restlessness, these all sound like a charge deficiency to me. You see, grounding is not optional, it's foundational. This is why I make sure to get my bare feet on the ground every single day. And to ensure that I stay grounded 24/7 like our ancestors did, I use my favorite grounding sheet as I sleep to keep me connected to the earth at all times. Check out my favorite grounding mats and sheets that I use on a daily basis by heading over to the description below, and make sure to use the promo code attached to get a massive discount on your entire order. 1000%. And that was such an important topic that you touched upon there about the toxicity load, because whether we are aware of it or not, whether we feel fine in the moment, smelling all these air fresheners, using toxic shampoos, deodorants, toothpaste, and so on, we may not feel it like temporarily, but as you said, it has a cumulative load. And your body has, let's say, a certain threshold or a bucket, which has a limit, right? And once it exceeds that, that's when I guess you could say that symptoms begin to manifest, whether that is in some kind of allergies or some kind of autoimmune or something like, an attack on your thyroid or something like this. Whatever your weakness is, everyone has like a weak link, in their body, and it only reveals itself under times of extreme pressure. Like a great example of this is if you were to place yourself under heavy barbell squats and, let's say you had really strong glutes and a really strong lower back, but then you had poor ankle mobility, then that would compromise your lower back inevitably, and then your back would give out, not because your back isn't strong, but because there is a weak link in your system. And so you need to be able to understand that, okay, instead of pushing your body all the way there unnecessarily where it doesn't need to go to actually overcome it afterwards, it's better to prevent the situation from happening in the first place. And because, as you said, people don't notice the symptoms immediately, they think, oh, I don't need to care about these things because all this stuff that they see online about alternative health and holistic stuff and, using natural things, it's all bullshit. But in reality, it's like, okay, well, if you actually want to feel good on a daily basis, for example, if you have low energy, if you have fatigue, if you have all the time congested nose, or if you have like puffiness in your face, these are all different symptoms and signs that something is overwhelmed in your system. Your lymphatic system, for some reason, is overwhelmed. If you're gaining weight, even if you're eating less food and you're exercising more and you're doing all the things, why is your body not able to let go of the weight? Do you maybe have stored toxins in your fat where your body actually doesn't want to let go of the fat into your bloodstream and circulate to your vital organs like your brain and your liver and these different places, and actually cause a bigger damage to your system? And is it waiting for you to reduce your toxic burden load in order to be able to then allow you to start burning the body fat, start reducing the swelling, the inflammation? Because all of these things, you and me both know, are symptoms and an adaptation really based on the situation. The body's always doing the best that it can based on the situation. But if you are, having these things, then you need to realize that how can I assist my body? And that's basically what Alex is saying, is that you need to, still take this precautionary approach. And another important thing that you mentioned was about the seed oils and the quality of the seed oils, the type of the seed oils. For example, I'm not against nuts and seeds, right? I don't consume them personally, but for example, every now and then, if I was faced in a situation where I would consume them, ideally I would want them raw and organic and unheated and unprocessed and unsalted and all that good stuff. Because there is something, I feel like, if you pick an almond from a tree, and I recently posted, on my stories, a picture of an almond tree, and it's absolutely beautiful when it's blooming, right? There's all these beautiful like blossoms on it. And you see that there is that sacred geometry within the tree, and there is something fundamental about that. Your mind and everything connects with that. And if you were to eat the almond from that tree, it's totally different from eating it from from the shelf, from a bag on the shelf. So that you are connecting with something greater than yourself, like God or the universe. There is an imprint within that food. It's sort of like a timestamp within your biochemistry and within your biophysics, about your environment and your situation and your season. Do you want to add anything to this before we move on?
I totally agree with you. Again, I caution people around nuts and seeds because a lot of people think that nuts and seeds are like the healthiest thing in the world, and they're eating lots of like trail mix and you know, using nuts for lots of their calories or for snacks, things like this. And then you're going to be getting a lot of those polyunsaturated fats. But do I go out of my way to avoid, like, you know, hummus at a Mediterranean restaurant that they use sesame seeds? No. You know, do I go out of my way to like completely avoid all nuts and seeds? No, I will eat them sparingly. I kind of think of it more as like a taste, like kind of a taste modifier that's put into a dish. Like pistachios, you know, great example, God. Super so tasty. Good. Yeah, so good, right? But I'm not eating handfuls of pistachios every day. So I tend to agree with you. You know, like nuts and seeds were given to us by God. They're a natural food. I think in moderation, there's nothing wrong with that. And I do want to go back to the point that you made about the total load, because I think that this is also relevant. I explain this concept to all of the clients that I work with, is that the body is able to manage a lot of stresses and toxicities on the system. The analogy I use is like a bucket, and there's water dripping into the bucket, and every drip is like a stress or a toxicity. The easiest way to think about it is just stress. Like if you have nutrient deficiencies or eating lots of seed oils, or you're consuming a lot of toxins, you're not getting enough sunlight, you're dehydrated, these are all stresses. You could also think about it as like toxicities, like that slow trickle of toxicities over time. So the body is able to manage a lot of that toxicity. This is one of the reasons why children tend to be very healthy, despite, you know, like when I was growing up, you probably didn't have any of this food in Greece, but we were eating toaster strudels and fruit roll-ups and sodas and candies. And I mean, the kind of food that I ate, I can't believe that that I'm even breathing right now. And that's like a miracle. It's like a miracle that God made our bodies that resilient. The body is able to manage a lot of stresses and maintain homeostasis despite a lot of these toxicities in our environment. But eventually the bucket overflows. The straw breaks the camel's back. And that can happen slowly over time, where the symptoms kind of just start to creep in and things just slowly get worse. Or like you said, there could be a major stressor or a major toxicity. It could be a psychological stress. It could be an environmental stress like mold, or like a medical intervention or whatever, that adds a lot of toxicity suddenly to the system and pushes you over the edge. And then, you know, a lot of people that I work with, I say, okay, well, when did this start? And they'll say, oh, I know exactly when it started, May of 2021. And I'm like, well, what happened in May of 2021? Or what happened 6 months prior? And most people have an answer to that question. They know whether it's they got a divorce, or they broke up with their partner, or they had a medical procedure. And it's not that singular event is the complete cause of their issue, because there was already that toxic load that was building up over time. But that event pushed them over the edge. And once the body is now decompensated and the bucket is now overflown, now you have to kind of go above and beyond to really recreate that balance for yourself, because now the body is like, you could think of it like the tissues are overwhelmed. So you really need to be aware of toxicities and dietary deficiencies and stresses more than you needed to worry about before, because your body was still kind of managing it. But once things start to kind of unwind and decompensate, then you need to really go back to what we call the foundation of health and establish that clean environment, low toxicity, good nutrition, filling those deficiencies, living a lifestyle in harmony with nature, getting enough sunlight, getting enough sleep, getting enough hydration, decreasing stress in your life, going above and beyond to create an environment for your body to heal.
Imagine spiking your blood sugar without eating cake, elevating cortisol, your stress hormone, without being stressed, and suppressing your body's most powerful sleep, antioxidant, and regeneration hormone, which is your melatonin. This is why I make sure to wear my yellow daytime blue light blocking glasses every time where I spend time indoors under artificial lights and in front of screens, to protect my eyes from oxidative stress and my entire body. And if I'm going to be exposed to artificial blue light, especially after sunset, I'm going to wear my red lens blue light blocking glasses to support my melatonin production and release. So if you want to protect your energy levels, sleep, and biology from artificial blue light, head over to the description and you will find all of the links with a massive discount on my favorite blue light blocking glasses. Oh yeah, fantastic breakdown. Let's go down the list of things that are actually toxic for human beings, just to make everybody aware. You're already listed quite a few there, but if we just list them like all, so people can be aware about all of the things in their life which are sabotaging their health, and unknowingly, without them knowing, what are some things that people are doing every day that they're unaware of, that they're exposed to, that they can, try and mitigate or minimize or remove from their life? Because, many times when we think about health, we think about adding things, adding supplements, adding biohacks, adding more things to our life. And our body's just like, totally freaked out, and we're not getting better because we're not actually removing the source of the problem, right? So let's become aware about the source of the problem. Tell me.
Yes. I would explain this. I would answer this question in terms of 4 pillars. These are the 4 pillars of health. We call it the foundation of health that we teach all of our clients. So there's detoxification, nutrition, lifestyle, and the mind. So let's talk about each one of those. With detoxification, you want to decrease your toxic load by decreasing environmental toxins. And this is pretty common sense. Like, you can get environmental toxins literally anywhere, especially in the modern world. A lot of the gadgets and products that we use are not made of great materials. So plastics, Teflon in our cookware, fragrances and air fresheners, all sorts of chemicals that we spray, that smell synthetic, that we put on our skin, body care products that we clean with. Obviously, toxins in our air, we should use air filtration for that. Toxins in our water supply, we should have a good water filtration system. A lot of things in our home can off-gas, whether it's, fake furniture made of that processed wood and glue that can off-gas chemicals. Carpets, which can hold plastics and flame retardants and harbor mold and things like this. A lot of furniture can have like flame retardants that can be off-gassing chemicals continuously.
Yep.
That whole like new car smell or new house smell, that's the smell of a lot of toxic chemicals. And a lot of that comes from just cheap production, building homes with cheap materials, the products that we buy being used with cheap materials like plastics and things like that. So again, I think this is kind of common sense. It's like, if it's synthetic, if it wasn't cut down from a tree or, derived from Mother Nature, the likelihood that it is going to create toxicity is much higher, right? Clothing as well, polyester, and the potential problem with microplastics. I mean, microplastics alone is a huge issue.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I would think about detoxification and environmental toxins.
Yes.
Is just decreasing your exposure to all of these things that you're around all the time. Really quickly, just to touch on the other pillars, nutrition, obviously, with processed food, seed oils, food chemicals and additives. So that's kind of its own category of toxins, is just the food that we're consuming.
Yes.
And then the way I would answer the question with the other pillars is again, like stresses on the system, so a lack of sunlight's a stress. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a toxicity, but it's like a stress. So,
yes.
The lifestyle pillar is about being in alignment with the environment on the planet, with the way that we evolved or the way that our bodies were designed to thrive on the planet. Morning and evening routines, sunlight, a balanced schedule, good sleep, movement and exercise, right? And then finally, the last pillar is the mind, and just, toxic people, toxic emotions and thoughts, false belief systems about who we are, that you can consider like a toxicity on the body or a stress on the body. So we should be systematically removing those negative belief patterns, negative thoughts, negative people. So I went a little bit beyond maybe the scope of the question, but I wanted to kind of be, comprehensive about it.
No, that was fantastic. And that's what I want to hear. And I think that the audience needs to hear this because they need to understand that toxicity is not just as simple as something that you consume. Of course, actually, one important thing that you mentioned there is that a lot of people don't realize that food can act as a stressor on the body. They just think that food or whatever is something that is in the store that is supposedly edible is actually okay for you to consume just because it's there on the shelf for you to buy. It's just the difference is it's not in the DIY store, it's in the supermarket. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like the same thing. They're just like putting it in the wrong department pretty much, and you're consuming it. And so here we are, like, stressing our body from all of these different categories that you mentioned. And I guess the thing to sum it all up, as you said at the beginning, is stress, right? Stress is like pretty much the root cause of most of our issues these days. That's why it's one of the, I think, up there with one of the leading causes of death, right? It's just chronic stress, because chronic stress, whether that's psychological or physiological, from all of these different factors that you mentioned, then it can break us down over time, because we know that the body cannot heal, repair, detoxify, and regenerate if it's not in a parasympathetic state. If it's all the time sympathetically driven, sympathetic dominance, then we are all the time running away from a tiger, and then none of those functions can pretty much take place. And unfortunately, in this modern world that we're living in right now, that's why we're wearing these blue light blocking glasses, right? We're trying to mitigate that external threat on our system, and also the wrong timing, so it doesn't act like an additional stressor on our system. Now, of course, we've got Wi-Fi's, which is another issue. All of these things can be added to the environmental stressors. And what you can do really about that is, I guess, build resilience, because of course you can, be afraid and scared of all these things that are trying to kill you or intoxicate your system. But then you want to build enough resilience, so capacity within your system. And that leads me into my next question about what is life force energy, and why is it important for us to understand this? Because this is where, this actually ties into resilience.
Yeah. To me, understanding what the life force is the difference between good holistic medicine and bad holistic medicine. Because there's a lot of alternative medicine schools out there, like functional medicine, which is really no different philosophically from conventional medicine. Basically, the way that conventional medicine works is they treat the body like a machine that breaks down. And you have to kind of repair the machine and put the body back together. Now, that works very well for certain circumstances. Like, I always use the analogy, like if you're shot in the chest, and you're bleeding out, it works well to think about the body like a machine. You're losing blood, the heart can't pump, so you need to keep the heart pumping. You need to replace the lost blood. You need to plug the hole. It's a very mechanical problem, right?
Yes.
Same with if you destroy your shoulder or your knee. A surgeon is going to look at the mechanical parts that have been damaged and either repair them or replace them. So that's a very mechanical way of looking at the body. That works for some things. The scope of that paradigm, though, is just very limited. And what the conventional medical model has done is it's applied that to everything, even to chronic illnesses, where now we're trying to look at biochemical pathways and receptors and genes and thinking about these as like broken parts that need to be fixed with drugs. And then functional medicine has arisen out of this kind of desire for an alternative. But what's happened is they do more functional, extensive testing. So they test for more things than your typical doctor will do. But then the typical solution for those problems is just to give you supplements to try to correct it, to try to rebalance your levels, to try to get biochemical pathways to function more efficiently. you're still looking at the body like a machine. You're still looking at the body mechanistically. And that's how people end up seeing a functional medicine doctor, thinking that this is a good alternative to conventional medicine. And they pay thousands and thousands of dollars for labs. They're on hundreds of supplements and they don't get any better because the paradigm is still mechanistic. It's still like conventional medicine. The recognition of the life force is that there is something inherent within us, inherent within the planet that God created, that spontaneously orders things and organizes things, that spontaneously heals us. It's this like invisible energy. And that might sound really far out, but it's very easily observable. It's like if you get a cut on your arm, your body will mend that together. If you break a bone, your body will mend that together. You just have to put the bones back together and like set them, but then the body will completely mend it. The same goes with chronic illnesses. It's no different. People think that like a chronic illness is like a different category for some reason, that like, oh, we need the professionals now to come in and manage the problem. And it's like, no. Yeah. The body will heal that the same way that it'll heal a cut or a broken bone or anything else. You just need to give the body the right conditions so that the life force can actually work, right? So you don't have to make your heart beat. You don't have to make your lungs breathe. You don't have to make your thyroid release thyroid hormone. Your body does this spontaneously. If you believe in the life force, you trust that there's an organizing principle in nature and life, then you stop trying to micromanage problems, right? You no longer tinker with the biochemistry. You realize you can take a step back. You address the big picture. Put your body in an environment that's natural, that's like the conditions on the planet that we were designed to be in, to recreate those conditions that we've lost in the modern world, and the body will take care of the rest.
Based on my research, this is the best shilajit in the world. Here's why you need to know about shilajit. Shilajit is a herbomineral substance made from the decomposition of plants and bacteria, this process taking place over thousands of years. It's harvested from the Altai and the Himalayan mountains. Think of it as a hyper-concentrated plant matter that is made by Mother Nature over thousands of years. In many cultures and traditions, it's known as the destroyer of weakness. Let me tell you why. Shilajit is loaded with ionic minerals, which are the most biocompatible with our human body. It also has a very high concentration of fulvic acid. This fulvic acid allows those minerals to get into the cell and do their work. Minerals are absolutely essential for all processes of the body, from having good energy levels, enhanced cognitive function, hormone optimization, and so much more, you name it. This is why I use Shilajit on a daily basis, because it works on a foundational level, on a mitochondrial level. And we know that we need healthy mitochondria in order to produce cellular energy. Something very important to mention is the quality of Shilajit. The one I use has been tested for heavy metals and impurities, ensuring the highest quality Shilajit. So if you want to experience this incredible ancient substance and find the one that I use on a daily basis, head over to the description below and use the promo code attached to get a discount on your entire order. Yes, absolutely. It's like the body has this innate wisdom to heal and repair itself if we, exactly as you said, put it in the right environment to do so. And it's the reason why we are seeing so much disease these days is because our environment has changed so much over the years, unfortunately, with all of the, air pollution, light pollution, sound pollution. It's basically everything is pretty much an attack on our spirit, really, and our soul, because we know that if our vessel, our body is not healthy, we cannot embody our highest self, like the best version of ourselves, right? So that we are more easily manipulated into doing things that are not in alignment with our values. We don't know what our actual values are because we lose touch with reality due to social media, due to screens, due to disconnection from, your real tribe. And then there we are manifesting all of these physical symptoms, wondering, how did we actually get here? But in reality, it's just that we have just simply disconnected ourselves from the natural world, which we have evolved to be in, and then also from each other. I feel like one of the most underrated things when it comes to health is actually social connection and tribe, and feeling safe in your tribe. And in the past, we always used to trust, we used to be able to believe and have trust and faith in our tribe. And if we didn't, well, we wouldn't feel safe. We would feel under threat, right? And that would be a real stressor on our system. And we will do something about that. Whereas now we just have that there all the time, subconsciously, because we're all the time isolating ourselves, stuck indoors, on screens, just believing that social connection online is the same as physical connection. I'm not saying that artificial connection or connection online is bad. I'm just saying there is some missing elements that your body is not receiving, right? There are some missing signals. Right now I'm seeing you through a screen, but I'm not able to scan your body and your face and your smell and the color and everything like I would in real life. So there is something fundamentally missing. And so now my nervous system is kind of like a little bit on the edge subconsciously, even whether I'm aware of it or not. And so all the time we have, again, this increased level of stress, which is adding to our total burden. So you described it beautifully. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on cellular voltage. How does cellular voltage fit into the story of life force energy?
I would kind of see it as like one and the same, or different ways of measuring the same concept. So, there's this idea of qi in Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and that's what you're tapping into with the meridians. You could think of the acupuncture needles as like little antennas, where you're actually concentrating the life force energy from the ether and putting it into different channels within the body. You could also think about metabolic energy. The school of thought around this is bioenergetics. That you're increasing the cellular energy, the voltage or the electrons that are passing through the mitochondria, which are giving the body energy and animating life. And that's a more biochemical or physiologic way of looking at it, but I feel like these are all different layers of the same kind of phenomenon. And you touched on something really interesting about the current environment that we live in, so disconnected from nature. I see that a big part of our work in holistic health is just trying to recreate a natural environment for ourselves, like we used to have for thousands of years. It's just going back to the basics of what a natural, healthy environment even looks like. But it gets into other pieces. Because you mentioned how our society is very disconnected. So there's a cultural element there that we're talking through screens and things like this. Robert Malone is a medical doctor that was one of the developers of the mRNA technology. And he's been on Joe Rogan a number of times. And he was kind of like a whistleblower for the technology, explaining that there's some real dangers about it that aren't being talked about. And he used the term mass formation psychosis to describe this phenomenon that during lockdowns, everyone was isolated. And that's extremely unnatural. And this is a tool that tyrannical or fascist governments use to get people to comply with their governance. So you isolate everyone, which is an extreme stress, and then people want the suffering to end. So then the government offers the solution and says, well, this can all end if you just do this. And everyone says, yes, okay, we'll do whatever you want. Please just let our society reopen again. So, and this kind of gets into it being almost a spiritual battle, a spiritual issue.
1000%.
And I think that these are all layers of looking at the same phenomenon. You could say that the life force is a spiritual energy. You could also say that it's a bioelectrical phenomenon or a mitochondrial energy phenomenon. These are just layers, I think, of describing the same kind of thing. But at the end of the day, in the final analysis, I do think it's like that energy is behind everything. Unseen energy, you could call that God, you could call it whatever you want. But that's really what's going on behind the scenes. And you could look at kind of what's taking place on the planet right now, fundamentally as like a good versus evil kind of spiritual warfare.
Connect with a like-minded community. Get ad-free episodes. Submit your burning desire questions to the guests of the show. Suggest topics and guests that you would love to see on the show. Get access to my programs, protocols, and blogs, as well as exclusive discounts on my one-on-one coaching programs. Get access to the Fitness Wisdom podcast community starting from just $2 a month. The link is in the description. I look forward to seeing you in there. 100%. Yeah, you're totally right on that one. I fully resonate with that. I had a dream the other night. I don't normally share my dreams, but here we go. So basically, I had a dream that, you know, I was talking to myself in the dream. It was really weird. It was like I was hearing myself, but I was talking to myself. I guess you could call it higher self. I don't know. And I was telling myself that I can tell your hormone levels, or I can tell your health by looking at your aura. That was such a like weird dream, but then it really hit like a very important point, and it really resonated with me deep inside that yeah, it's true that when I look at someone, you know how they say that don't judge a book by its cover. I kind of feel like that was like a persuasion, you know, because actually you can tell a lot about the, you know, of course that's different when it comes to books, right? But then, you know, when it comes to an individual, if a person is glowing, if they have good energy, if they have good vibes, if you feel comfortable around them, that tells you something, that there is something fundamental about that individual, that they are, how do you say, they are anchored in their nervous system state. They are secure, they are grounded, and then that energy is very inviting. And then I feel that is also built through foundational principles, not only spiritually, but, you know, physically as well. And you touched upon bioenergetics there, and I want you to go a bit deeper into that and explain that to us, the concept about it and about the idea of doing specific diets, because everybody has a dogmatic view about diet these days, right? But no one is actually discussing what do you actually need in a diet in order for it to be healthy. How can that actually support your bioenergetics, about your life force energy, so that you can glow from the inside?
Yes, I think a helpful way that I look at this is that stress leads to disease and energy leads to health, right? So health and energy are kind of synonymous concepts. If you're trying to heal, you need to build enough energy in the system in order to overcome the toxicity or the problem and actually repair the tissue. Yes. And a lot of things that we do in the name of health actually deplete our energy. So diet's a very good example. People get very attached to thinking about diet in very rigid ways and like restricting things and trying to force these like weird physiological states. Like, again, like when it comes to, you know, carnivore or keto, like decreasing your blood sugar to a very low level just because the idea that blood sugar is bad for you, like these kind of like weird ideas. And then we get into these restrictive dogmatic diets, when I think a much better way of thinking about nutrition is that our diet and food fundamentally needs to give our body energy. That's literally what it's doing. So if the dietary paradigm that you're following doesn't have that at its base, then it's likely going to lead to problems, because you're not going to be considering how your food is actually increasing your bioenergetic energy, right? So when you think in terms of energy, it changes the kinds of foods that you focus on. Yes. You focus on foods that are going to get to boost your mitochondria, that are going to produce high amounts of ATP. You stop thinking so much in terms of restricting things and having these strange assumptions about diet, like, oh, well, we should eat like cavemen ate because they knew what they were talking about, or we should eat this way or that way. You stop thinking in terms of these strange dogmatic ideas and assumptions, and you start actually using nutrition as a tool for healing. And there's many other things, and this kind of gets back to the, you know, that graphic post of like healthy things that are actually unhealthy. You know, people think that like running marathons, for example, and doing HIIT workouts 5 times a week is healthy for you.
Yep.
I would never, ever recommend someone train and run a marathon or start doing HIIT workouts if they're trying to heal from an illness, because that's going to be depleting all of your energy. It's not to say that all running is bad or that you can't have a really hard workouts sometimes, but a lot of people stress their body in this attempt to be healthy. The same with cold plunging. there's a lot of people now that have come to realize that cold plunging can be very stressful for you. Now, I think that we are very much on the same page, like with the salmon and with the nuts and seeds. I feel the same with cold plunging.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not against exposing the body to cold water. Yeah, yeah. You know, cold, there's a million positive benefits of exposing the body to cold. And like, I wonder if these people that are so against cold plunging wouldn't jump in the ocean like on a cold day when the water's like 50 degrees. Like that's cold plunging. It's like, are you saying that like it's not healthy to jump in cold ocean water? It's about the exposure. It's about the frequency. It's about the exposure. It's about how cold the water is. And you know, to their point, people have taken it way too far. They think that you know, so I work in Fahrenheit. So it would be like 34-degree tub. That would be like what? Like 1 degree Celsius water for 5 minutes every day is good for you. Like I wouldn't, you know, that's extremely stressful. But it's not to say that doing short, moderate cold plunging, especially after a sauna, doing like that hot cold therapy or contrast therapy is wrong. So again, I think it goes back to context, but it's very helpful to think again about disease happening due to too much stress, and there's psychological stress, but there's also physiological stress. So prolonged cold exposure and prolonged aerobic exercise, these kinds of things are stressful to the body physiologically.
Yes, and going back to what we started about the nutrition, you mentioned about like people altering their metabolisms on purpose because they have, you know, we're told that, for example, when you're in a ketogenic state, it has some benefits, and I'm sure that's true. But what happens when you push things too far, right? We attach to things. We hear something that fasting is good, cold is good, hard workouts are good, and then what we do as human beings, we think more is better. Let's just do more of that thing. And in reality, it's never like that, because how it works, like how adaptation can take place, is you have the have the spike of the stressor, and then you have a period of recuperation and rest and restoration, so you can come back bigger, better, faster, stronger, more resilient than before. But if you don't have the adaptation there, the adaptation period, you're just going to be digging a hole that you are never going to refill, because modern life as it is right now is already digging our hole. So if you keep on adding, like for me personally, I don't do any running at all. All I do is sprinting, because I love sprinting, and it's got many great like benefits on hormones. And I only do it 1 time per week because I'm aware about all these things that you just mentioned, that it being an additional stressor. Me doing it 1 time per week is amazing, in addition to a couple of other like resistance training workouts that I do outside. But if I was to do this 3 to 4 times per week on top of my resistance training, I would feel absolutely trashed, even though my sprints take an average of 15 minutes in total if I do 10 or 8 rounds of all-out sprints. But that is enough to deplete my entire system for a whole week. And if I'm not going to take the time to recover from that, and I do that on a regular basis because I've been told that sprints are good for me, and or I want to become, you know, a top athlete, and I believe that more is better, then I'm just going to keep on breaking my body down, and that's definitely not good.
I agree with you 100%. We human beings tend to take things all the way to the extreme, when really balance is almost always the right answer.
1000%. Yeah, it's so important, because the nuance and the context is what is missing, I feel like, from online world and social media. You find so many conflicting opinions. People are just totally confused. You know, they're going, you know, they're persuaded one way or the other way. And I know personally that social media is actually not for good at all. It's actually used for psychological manipulation and persuasion. This is why we are fed specific narratives at certain times, pushed certain songs to use on our reels, certain topics. We see certain things, certain dances, certain geometric shapes. It's literally like MK Ultra. You know, MK Ultra never ended. You know, it was, you know, it was with drugs initially, and then it converted to blue light and electromagnetic fields. And this war is continuously going on and on and on. And we are manipulated because we are, how would you say, we are doing it, right? So if you step away from it and you don't do it anymore, if you don't use it, you can start to see the bigger picture. You become like an eagle that zooms out and you can see what's actually going on. Imagine, like, you know, when you're scrolling and you can't stop scrolling, if you imagine yourself out of your body and you look down at yourself, do you think that's a pretty image of yourself? Would you say something to yourself? Would you say that maybe you are wasting your life? Or is it something useful? Is it giving you something back in return? And I'm not saying that people can't use social media for good, as you and me are doing, spreading a good message and putting a good knowledge and information and wisdom out there to empower people. But then once you've got enough of that, it's important to not get lost into these real tabs and short tabs and TikTok scrolls, because the Reels tab is specifically designed to keep you longer on the platform. You know, on Instagram, for example, and on the same on YouTube Shorts. If you're on the YouTube short feed, you're going to keep on scrolling and you're going to try and find something which is going to trigger your dopamine. And if you don't find something, you're going to keep on scrolling until you find something. And this is the way that these technologies have been designed by design on purpose to keep you hooked on these platforms. And that is sucking, another way, which is sucking our life force energy, our cellular energy out of ourselves. And when you stop doing that and you put it down, you feel like crap. And then in order to raise your dopamine again, you go back on your device and you're in this perpetual loop. So it's so important to be self-aware, have different ways of scanning yourself, scanning your environment, scanning your body. How do you feel right now? Your breathing. Do you feel like your chest is tight? Do you feel anxious for no reason? Like, all of these things can just be because of the world that we are living in right now. How important do you think purpose actually is for our health?
Oh, it might be the most important thing, because health is just a vehicle. A lot of people make health into the destination, when health is really the vehicle, and your purpose is the destination. You know, you could say that God's plan for you is the destination, you know? So, health is just designed to give you the capacity to manifest the life that God wants you to live. I see a lot of people in the health space, it's like they make health their religion, you know? And, I think that having a deeper purpose, it's like, and that could just be, waking the population up, like what we're doing, educating people, helping other people to become more healthy. That could be a purpose. I'm not saying that that's not a legitimate purpose, but the point is that our health is meant to serve a function. We're not, we're not like a statue that's going to stand with like this beautiful physique for everyone to look at without serving any role in the world, right? But a lot of people make their health into like this physical specimen that they can show off or something. So yeah, man, I agree with that a million percent. And I think that finding your purpose, that praying to God and asking God what he wants for you to do, that can be one of the greatest ways to heal from a chronic problem, is to have that, like that light that you're going towards, right? Without purpose, it's like, well, what are we doing here?
Your skin is not just a barrier, it's a living organ. Anything that you put on it gets absorbed into your lymphatic system and your bloodstream. You see, skin health is a reflection of your internal health. This is why I make sure to only use non-toxic skincare products. This is why I love Fat Skin, a non-toxic, all-natural skincare brand, made to work with your skin, not against it. Every ingredient has a purpose: to nourish, protect, and support your skin the way that nature intended. My personal two favorites are the Copper Peptide Salve and Quantum Blue solar-powered skincare. Tricopper peptides are known for their skin repair and renewal properties, while methylene blue is known for its very potent antioxidant and protective properties against oxidative stress. So if you want to check out the all-natural non-toxic skincare that I love to use on a daily basis, go to the description below and use the promo code attached to get a nice discount on your entire order. Beautifully said. Yeah, it's so important to have also, again, as you mentioned, about some sort of connection, some belief to some higher power greater than yourself. It's very easy to believe that you are God, right? Especially in a world that we are living in right now, and with AI, like many people have made AI their gods, and that's a very dangerous game. You want to have like think about some greater power greater than yourself that is governing our entire planet, our entire universe, the trees, the sea, the seasons. There is something greater than you out there, which can be extremely powerful and assistive for you if you are willing to accept its power, pretty much. And all it's asking is your acceptance. And it just takes a lot of humility to get there, right? It takes a lot of to accept that you are not the most important thing in the world, and that there is something greater than you that brought you here. And again, it ties into your life force energy, into your resilience, into your health, and how actually you can use the universe or God's power to embody better your highest self, so that you can serve humanity the best that you can, on a daily basis. Because we all know that when we're not feeling good, we're shit to other human beings. I can say that for myself, as a fact. If I'm not feeling good, I can't be good to others around me. I'm moody, and I want to just hide away. Whereas if I'm feeling good, I can give to others. Like if I have an overflowing cup of energy, like life force energy, now I can be the best version of myself. I can bring my best self forward and lead by example and lift others up rather than put them down. And to be honest, like the majority of the messages on my podcast is about empowerment and and bringing the nuanced perspective, not necessarily bashing anybody, because I feel like everyone has a point. Vegans have a point, carnivores have a point, like everybody has a point. I just feel like we just need to extract what's useful from every single thing and discard what doesn't serve us, because we're all, again, so bio-individual. Like our body is so different. We have maybe slightly different anatomy in terms of our biomechanics and our biochemistry. There are many, many different things. We're all at different situations in life and ages in our life, and we must just take what's useful. So again, for everybody who's listening to this episode and you managed to make it this far, take what's useful from this and just, try and apply some of these things that we mentioned, or remove, which we talked a lot about, and just see for yourself how you feel, right? Experiment, make your body the lab rat, like I do myself, and I'm sure that Dr. Alex does as well. That, if you don't test things out for yourself, you don't know. And then you're just blindly trusting people online about certain things. And then only then can you actually decide, okay, whether something is good for you or not. But at the end of the day, there are always some foundational principles, which Dr. Alex highlighted on there, which is like, going back to nature, eating real food, sleeping, connecting with your tribe, moving your body often, exercising, but not exercising too much. There is a balance and a nuance to everything and context to everything. And so it's important that you guys take the message of that you shouldn't abuse something just because it's good. Because in a way, if you do something too much of a good thing, can become a bad thing eventually. So do you have any last words of wisdom, Dr. Alex, before we sign off the show?
Really well said, man. I think to one of the points that you made, one of the things that people have lost touch with is their intuition.
Yes.
And you could say that's your internal knowing, or again, you could say that that's God speaking through you. But experimenting yourself, seeing things for yourself, trusting what you see with your eyes, feeling how things feel for you, and taking what works and discarding what doesn't, trusting yourself. Your body is like, I definitely don't agree that your body is like mechanistic at all, but it's like a supercomputer beyond our wildest dreams. So our ability to sense the world around us, like sense people's aura, get that intuitive feeling about things and feel how things are working for us. No one can tell you how something impacts you personally. No one can get inside of your head and inside of your body and feel what's happening for you. So getting back in touch with your intuition and again, I always go back to God, to praying to God and asking God for clarity and developing that personal relationship. That will get you farther than any research study that's ever been made.
100%. Yeah, definitely. And, if you don't want people to suck your energy and to become energy vampires, because there's many people out there who are trying to drain your energy and suck your energy. The more you step into your power as a human being, the more you trust and you believe yourself, the more you cultivate your health. And then that radiates that life force energy, and you have the energy now to listen and take care of yourself more. And then that drives you more down this path of self-development. The more your aura is sort of like a shield, right? Which is unpenetratable. But if you're, not taking care of your health, that's just one of the ways that people can more easily manipulate you. And this is basically what's happening in the world right now with all these big elite forces. They're trying to like suppress our health. They're spraying these chemicals in the sky. They're trying to inject the entire planet. They're putting toxic stuff in our food. They're trying to poison us from every single direction. But this is why it's the greatest act of rebellion if you actually take care of yourself.
Yes.
You nurture yourself, and then that way they can't touch you. That way your stress bucket is bigger. That way your resilience is greater, and then you're more likely to be able to overcome anything that they throw at you. So thank you so much, Dr. Alex. Where can people actually find you, connect with you, and work with you if they wish to do so?
So all the major platforms, alexorton.nd on Instagram. Our business website is havenholistichealth.com. And the first step to working with me one-on-one is scheduling a free consultation. So there's buttons on the website and in bio to do that if you want to chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing this, and I'd definitely love to do another one in the future.
Sounds great, Andreas. Thank you, man.
If you guys enjoy the topics and guests I bring on the show, I would really appreciate it if you left me a 5-star review on Spotify and subscribe to Fitness Wisdom Podcast on YouTube as well. This helps to spread the knowledge and wisdom with the world. Until next time.